Do I need the mic, or can you hear me okay?
No, go ahead. It's on right now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Walter Baradsky. I've been active with this issue for the last 2.5 months in Merritt. Once I found out about what the technology was all about. I'd like to thank you all for attending. Special thanks to our volunteers. You can't do something like this unless you've got some help. And thank Millie and her group for the food and the treats and the refreshments at the back. And those that have been helping out at the tables. And also I want to thank the my volunteer helpers that did the door-to-door delivery of the flyers. And thank you to Kamloops and Salmon Arm and Enderby. We have members from the Coalition for Smart Meters here from that distance. They came here to be with us. Thank you very much. Would you please stand up and so you can be recognized? Those from Thanks again. The information that you will receive here this evening is vitally important to you. Your family's health, your privacy and security. But I believe that your intellect and heart will convince you where the truth is regarding BC Hydro Smart Meter program and the dangers and damages to humans related to wireless technology, which is radio frequency electromagnetic field radiation, RFEMC. The objectives of the presentation this evening are twofold: to inform residents about radio frequency electromagnetic fields radiation and show residents how they can protect their persons and residences from the installation of wireless smart meters, push back against BC Hydro and their Corex contractor if they already have a wireless smart meter installed on their residences, and especially if you without your consent. The other objective is to determine the level of interest within our communities, to form a Merritt chapter of Coalition Against Smart Meters. There are sign-up sheets around. I certainly hope that if this is what the community wants, together we can do it and we can make a difference. So there are sign-up sheets if you are willing to get involved in setting up our own local chapter. That's Coalition Against Smart Meters. So, the reason we've gathered here tonight is to learn about BC Hydro Smart Meters and the hazards of their wireless technology. However, there is a different reason why we gather here tonight. With a show of hands, how many have heard of the Occupy movement that has gone global over the past several months? Most everybody has heard of it. Okay? Well, it's pretty incredible. Well, I liken the implementation of the global smart meter grid and smart meters to it's just another cause for the Occupy movement. It is really about corporate greed and profiteering. We here are the 99%ers, the vulture picnic, to quote Greg Palast, that the 1%ers are feeding off. But I find if I cannot understand why something has happened, we ask the question, can I follow the money? Well, Brian Thiessen will address this in some detail later this evening. And you will know it to be true because the facts have been in print for many months and nobody has been sued. And on the matter of truth, I want to share with those that did not read my last letter to the editor about proof positive that radio frequency electromagnetic field radiation is toxic to humans. BC Hydro, in their print material, in their presentations, say, well, there are no health concerns with the wireless technology. And it's, you know, unless you get to the real meat of the matter, it's pretty hard to argue that. But there is proof positive that radio frequency electromagnetic field radiation, that is RF, EMF, is toxic to humans. This is clearly defined in the World Health Organization, which is the International Agency for Research on Cancer, that's IARC. Their classification listings for toxicants or toxic exposures. If a toxicant or a toxic exposure is studied by the IARC for potential carcinogenicity and classified as a 4, which means it's not a carcinogen, it is therefore defined, studied, safe, decided. So you know what is safe. If the IARC listing is anything between a 2A or a 2B listing, it is by definition to some degree not safe. For example, that is a listed probable or possible carcinogen. If it is a 1A listing, it is a known carcinogen. Now, is this not so obvious an answer to proof of safety arguments? Does this not provide a legitimate answer for those who dismiss the scientific evidence because you cannot prove the null or negative, or because you can't see it, you can't hear it, you can't feel it? Well, to be sure, some people can indeed feel it. The International Agency for Research on Cancer has been studying and classifying toxicants and toxic exposures since 1965. And over the years, many of these agents have been reclassified, always moving towards a greater degree of carcinogenicity. Never has an agent been found to be safer than first classified. The World Health Organization, again, which is the International Agency for Research on Cancer, classified radio frequency electromagnetic field radiation as a Group 2B potential carcinogen on May 31st of this year. There are more than 200 additional agents in this classification, including DDT, which is banned in 1970 in Canada. Do people feel differently if they said, we're going to come one day and spray your house with DDT, and then every day thereafter forever and ever? Same classification as radio frequency electromagnetic field radiation. Chloridane is another agent that was banned in 1988, and lead. Doesn't everyone now know about the toxicity of lead? Therefore, when BC Hydro or our government tells us that their wireless smart meters are safe, they are deceiving us. They're misleading us. No, they are lying to us because they have this information, or ought to, given that citizens are being exposed to a possible carcinogen and given that this imposition is non-consensual. That's my opening remarks, and now we'll move on to our guest presenters. First of all, I've got to change it here. I'd like to introduce Curtis Bennett, alias Thermo Guy of Kelowna-based Thermographics Consulting. Curtis is regarded as an expert on the health effects of wireless technology. Curtis spoke to the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Health in October of 2010 to address the specific question of the safety of microwave radiation in children and their exposure in schools. Curtis, please do expand on your credentials and your involvement as an interprovincial journeyman electrician. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay back there? Okay, they're going to play with the lights here too because I want to show you guys some stuff. Now here's something that's really important for you guys to consider with me being here, is that you can imagine this, as an interprovincial journeyman electrician, we power the world. We power industry, we make it happen. We're EMF specialists because everybody has electricity in their home and it works and you're safe.
This will make you an EMF specialist.
Okay, let me finish my presentation first, please. Okay, let me get into my background first and then you can get into disqualifying me after the fact, okay? Do you have EMFs coming into your home called 60 hertz? Is that an EMF? Is that an EMF?
You told me to be quiet and let you finish your thing.
Okay, so this is my point is, so let me finish this stuff, please, and then we can get into this, even anybody in the telecommunications industry. Here's the point with this. As electrical professionals, if we come to your home or we work for industry and we tell you, don't touch that, you listen to us. We're electrical professionals. We get credentials that are given to us, but after we've earned those things, provincially and federally. So we have those credentials. The Premier sends us congratulatory letters. Prime Minister's office, all the above. Now on top of that, I've got an engineering background, and on top of that, what I did is I built my education to complement a background in infrared. Now where this is important to you, and I want to show you some of this stuff, very important is that, listen, we calculate for temperature. We don't typically see it. So the work we do, here's an example of this. I lecture EMFs in medical education for education credits. The dangers of the technologies was just lecture in medical education for education credits. I am not a lobbyist of any particular kind. We're here to warn you on these things. And I want to take you through some of this quickly, because one of the things when we get into more of this, you can imagine this. Do you know what they use to determine how this is heating you? A meat probe. A meat probe on a dummy that's not alive. So they said that there's a heating effect in this. So imagine this, the world is blind to temperature. So I want to show you guys just some quick information here. This is where we work, and some work we do for the whole world. This is an infrared image and a temperature image here, and what we do is we use this to see energy losses in buildings. You know, more emissions. Here's missing insulation in this wall right here. So we do this for municipalities because at the end of the day, buildings are signed off as compliant. We can't actually see how they're functioning. We don't go in and tell everybody how to do their work. We just provide them sight so they can see it. Here's something we do for, how many guys in here work with the lumber industry? Tolco? Anybody ever work with that group at all? Well, you guys imagine this. We come in here and troubleshoot your electrical systems for Tolco and your insurance companies at the same time to keep guys safe, to keep things from blowing up. So what we'll do with this is, here's a fuse disconnect. Here's what it looks like with our visible spectrum. Here you can see here, we've got a very hot connection here. That if it's not left, if something's not done with that and you don't attend to it, it's going to cause failure. And that failure could be explosions, people getting hurt, and we just want to avoid that. And they're insured for it. Here's an example, we did this locally too, where this is just hot water heating under a floor. So they wanted to anchor this equipment here, so they called us and said, listen, we forgot this, we don't know where the heating is, we just go in and show them this. How many people were here for the forest fires? So you imagine this for me. Trained our first fire department over 20 years ago to see through smoke. So when this fire hit Kelowna in 2003, they said, we can't fight this fire, we can't see it. I contacted forestry, contacted the Premier and said, let us help you with this. You could track the direction of the fire through the smoke. And they just laughed and laughed it off. Well, imagine this with an interface with Kelowna. This is August 21st. This is what Kettle Valley looked like. See the houses here? See this? That's all smoke. Nobody could see anything from the air or the ground. This is what initiated the evacuation of Kettle Valley. See this right here? Here's the fire coming. 300 feet a minute coming towards Kelowna. So that initiated the evacuation of 15,000 people. And again, it's just a technical job that we have with this. Now, how many people heard of SARS, N1H1, this flu issue? Imagine this. My industry imaged hundreds of millions of people at ports of entry and couldn't produce one image of a flu. And the reason they couldn't is picking up this technology requires more than this. You have to have more to do with it than this. Here's what a flu looks like. You can see the one side of her face, the sinus is inflamed. So again, it's just the idea that physiological changes can be seen. Here's progression of infection for a medical department just based on a spider bite. That's it. That's the change in infection in 1 day. And again, what we do is provide that site to medical professionals. That's what arthritis looks like. That's rheumatoid arthritis. You see that heat wrapped around the knees? And again, showing doctors, here's what it looks like. They can treat them with anything they want. Cell phone radiation. Here's a young man before he talked on his cell phone. Over here, he's talked on his cell phone for an hour. Can you see the differences? So you imagine this. How many guys keep that cell phone in your pocket?
Yeah.
You guys think about that. So I tell guys, what, change pockets and radiate yourself evenly, because we're not meant to hold radiating devices next to our body. Now this actually came up because of this young lady here. After I presented for Parliament, Barb got a hold of me and she said, you presented that these frequencies are dangerous. And I said, yes. And she said, I've had a cell phone claim going on and they say it's not happening. She said, would you take my claim? And I said, no, not necessarily. I said, I want to see what happened first. So when Barb came to me, here I'm looking at Barb and I said, tell me your story, Barb. So Barb's telling me how her hand was impacted, where she held the phone. I said, show me the patterns on your arms. What do you feel? And she said, I'm burning in my hand. I'm burning into my arms like this, but they said, this isn't burning the exterior. I said, it's going right through you. So here's an example of what we see in the infrared spectrum to see if Barb was fibbing. Did you see her hands and you see her arm? Barb was a cell phone salesman, top producer. So she had this thing wrapped around her head, in her hand, the whole time. Now here's where the most important part of this is. This is the law. You guys have heard of the BC Building Code, Canadian Electrical Code. We all have to adhere to this. This is the Canadian government's code. The limits of human exposure to radio frequency, electromagnetic energy. It's just EMFs. Now imagine this, the limits to human exposure, do you know why? We don't want to hurt people. That's the purpose of any code. So when you look this up, now here's what's interesting with this code. I was watching CBC News, and I was watching parents talk about Wi-Fi in schools. It's hurting our kids. And I watched them being sloughed off and ignored and saying this isn't happening. Well, guess what? Of course it can happen. So we went in and we dug into the code. So imagine this code right here is based on 30 years of scientific literature. But it's got to be one of the only codes in the world that says this. We don't know the mechanism linking these frequencies to adverse health effects. We don't know the mechanism. So what we know is we know people are heating up. So they've just assigned a power density or wattage to people so you can be heated up. So go ahead.
I remember reading a news article quite a while back, and I think it was that Canada was holding a technology symposium.
Yes.
And they invited a European scientist.
Yes.
And he was appalled at the level of 6. He could not believe that the government was being so irresponsible with its citizens.
You know, you're 100% right, but imagine this. We would normally never have a code that said we don't know what's causing a problem, so instead we're just going to let you be heated up. And you're not being heated up. Imagine this. We're essentially little electrical conductors. And what these guys have said is, hey, we can hook you up to a power density, and we know it's heating you up a little bit. But and most of the heating happens in the first 6 minutes. Imagine, you know what power density is? Volts times amps. You know, here you are inducing an electrical charge into an electrical human being, but what the code did is they didn't treat humans as electrical people at all, electrical anything. As a matter of fact, they treated humans like a hunk of tissue in a microwave. We know they're heating up, so let's just heat them up a little bit. So you imagine kids running around school with Wi-Fi, and here they are being surrounded by this power density, this stuff they say, oh, we're going to impose this many watts per square centimeter of view, depending on how much you weigh. And we don't understand, how many people know that little cable going to the back of your television? The little coaxial cable, everybody seen that? You see that little wire in there? Sometimes you have a hard time just putting that in. Do you understand the surroundings around that cable are there to protect that wire from electromagnetic interruption, electromagnetic interference? If you didn't have that coating on there, you'd have your husbands getting mad at you, especially during sporting events, because guess what? The signal's not going to come through. And guess what? We are those little wires without the coatings, without the protection. So this is causing problems. Now imagine this with this code. This code says, because we don't know what's happening, if we find out what's happening, we'll use the weight of evidence approach on an ongoing basis. And we'll change that code if deemed necessary. So this is why, for me, September of 2010, contacted Health Canada, and I said, guys, your code's missing this data on what's linking this. Well, guess what? We just presented it to them and said, here's what's linking your adverse health effects. As soon as you equate people to being electrical, they admit they're inducing them. They admit they're heating them up. They admit all of this. But you know what the code says? We want to avoid the unintentional stimulation of tissue because it causes nerve and muscle stimulation. Now, if you want to know what nerves and muscles do, well, nerves and muscles, guess what nerves do? Run every function of your body. They're effectively the switches and the communication systems. So even when I first heard about this issue, doctors are saying some of them are anxious, some of them are depressed, some of them have hurt heads, some of them hurting someplace else. They said, what do your nerves do? And they said, they run every function in your body. So here's another example of this. Did you guys know that SIDS rates are up 30% in BC over last year? Do you guys know?
You're blaming this on this frequency stuff?
Listen, why don't you let people finish first, because guess what?
Well, that's just ridiculous.
Well, you really don't know what you're talking about, because guess what?
You're promoting a bunch of doom and gloom.
Listen, what you'd like to do is, listen, there's avenues for you to qualify or disqualify my credentials. You can go to the government and do this, but I'll tell you what, this is lectured in medicine for education credits. Doctors need for licensing. So what you've done right now is you've effectively said the American Academy of Family Physicians doesn't know what they're talking about. You've said that the Florida Board of Medicine. Yes. Yes. Nerves.
The sick are getting sicker.
Nerves
and
run your lungs.
Gonna get sick.
Nerves run your lungs. And when you've got a susceptible child and their nerves are affected, what do you think's going to happen?
Just go into the hospital.
Who do you represent? I'm just amazed that
Listen, hey, listen, if you want, listen, I'll tell you what. You want to sue me, you want to bring it to me, listen, I will meet anybody anywhere. Listen, don't sit here and disqualify me until you finish listening to things, okay? This is lectured in medicine for education credits doctors need for licensing. Why would you sit there and say that it doesn't exist anymore? You can contact the program, you can contact the health administrators. But your nerves run your lungs, your nerves run your heart, your nerves run every part of you. One guy said, guess what? My child lost their eyesight. Do you have an optic nerve? So guess what? Don't let anybody kid you, especially this nonsense here. Because guess what? Do those frequencies go through walls and roofs? They're going through people. They're going through a mom. They're going through a fetus. They're going through all the above. And you guys imagine this. Hey, listen, sir. Hey.
Just let him go and carry on.
Why doesn't he leave?
Yay!
You guys imagine this, and this is again why stuff like that, I wish you'd sit in here and get educated. Because it's an education process for me, because I didn't believe it either until I didn't hear the language that I wanted to hear from governments as a credentialed professional.
He's had too much exposure.
Well, he might have too much exposure. But you guys imagine this, after Kamloops, you guys think of this, after Kamloops, I get a retired welder coming up to me, and you know what he says to me? I'm a retired welder that worked for the electrical union, and I've got a pacemaker. Is this going to interfere with my pacemaker? And I said, call me tomorrow and tell me what your instructions say. Do you know what the instructions say in his pacemaker? Stay out of an electromagnetic field. So guess what? He's quit working, he's retired. Now they're going to bring a smart meter and an electromagnetic field to his building. And can it interfere with his device? Yes. The manufacturer says that. The hospital put it in. There's a young lady back here that called me last week, and guess what she does? She works in an extended care with disabled people. They have health monitoring equipment in here, as well as disabled people. It's Health Canada's, when this guy talks like this, do you know who says it causes nerve and muscle problems? Health Canada, not me. It's these guys that say that's going to happen. When they talk about this interfering with health equipment, she's saying this, guess what? We're governed by the same rules as a hospital. Can this frequency being attached to my house affect that equipment? Can it affect those disabled people? Can it take out your grandparents? Can it take out susceptible babies? And the answer is electrically yes. Now the reason why I'm really sticking to my guns on this is, guess what? As an electrical professional and a Canadian professional, what did I do? I contacted Health Canada, contacted Industry Canada, contacted them in Kelowna, went to see them, Went to look at installations, all the above. Do you know what Industry Canada, do you know what their response to me was? They're not electric.
What?
That was it. Humans aren't electric. The next specialist said this to me. Curtis, those frequencies aren't entering their body. And I said, they're going through walls and roofs and concrete, but they're coming to a screeching halt at your body? I said, not going to happen. Not going to happen. So imagine this. When you take this to the government and they say, we will use the weight of evidence approach on an ongoing basis, that means they have to disqualify me. I'm not looking to beat them up. I'm looking to get some help from my authority. And guess what? They're not answering those questions for you. They're not answering those questions where Health Canada has not passed on that information to the BC government. And guess what the BC government is doing? Now you see this code here? This code here, imagine this. Limits of human exposure because you can't hurt people. BC Hydro says this. When we reported this as electrical professionals to the Canadian government, it changed the application of the law because guess what? They are being stimulated, without a doubt. They say they're being stimulated. It changed the application of the law and made the frequencies illegal, according to Safety Code 6. BC Hydro says right in their fact sheet, we have to comply with Safety Code 6 because we can't hurt people. This is the federal guidelines. BC Utilities Commission, we have to comply with Safety Code 6. Do you know what the Energy Minister says? We have to comply with Safety Code 6. When we tell them they're not complying with Safety Code 6, do you know what they're doing? They're telling you, we're going to put this in regardless of what you think. We're going to put this in, you know, imagine this. When I'm talking like, when I hear goofy stuff like this, imagine this. Here I'm dealing with the BC Coroner's Office and asking the BC Coroner's Office, did you know this is lectured in medicine now and that might have taken those kids out? And guess what? The Coroner's Office said no. We hadn't thought of that, but they're thinking of it now. And they're looking at it now. They're looking at these issues now, and again, they're looking at this exchange where, guess what? The Energy Minister, I'm an energy professional. And guess what he did? Dismissed me. Do you know what the weight of evidence approach is? Weight of evidence. Meaning, but you know what they did? They dismissed electricity as peer-reviewed science. So here's that worst part for you. If I didn't come here, this is what I told my group said, listen, you're taking on a controversial issue, and I said, if you had something that was going to hurt my family, you better step the hell up and do your job, because this can hurt people. And that's the whole thing. What do you think of this guy like this? What happens if he gets taken out like this? What are the liabilities just to the people, never mind her as a care provider, with people being affected by this, when the government's language says this? The predominant health effect to be avoided is the unintentional stimulation of tissue, and they're stimulating tissue. The predominant health effect to be avoided is the heating of tissue. They admit they're heating tissue. But they're going to bring this to your homes. And where guys like that better take it seriously, it's because I'm one of those guys that said the same thing until somebody said, why are bees disappearing? And I said, because they want to. I don't know what the hell bees are doing. But guess what? To find out that there's bee colony collapse. To find out that they're disappearing. And imagine this, to look at this thing and say, oh, bees use the Earth's magnetic field for navigation. And all of a sudden they run into these frequencies and they're getting lost. And guess what bees are responsible for? Pollinators, our food sources. So we're messing around with some real big deals here. Even with the Wi-Fi issue in schools, imagine this. I went to look at a Wi-Fi installation because I didn't know what it was. And I went to look and I said, oh my God, guys, you guys are radiating that entire school to avoid pulling wires to computer stations. And the parents are saying, my kids are sick. I mean, these guys here, these guys aren't lobbyists of any particular kind. They're parents, they're concerned citizens, and just not getting the answers that they need. So when I'm here doing this, again, I'm doing my job. I'm doing my job. Now if you guys, here's my website here. If you go on the left-hand side, and again, when you think of guys like this, and again, that opinion, imagine this. The US court system contacts me and says, you testified for a Canadian Parliament. I said, yes. He said, why'd you do that? And I said, they're my authority having jurisdiction. If it was the RCMP locally, I'd contact the RCMP, whatever it is. And he said, you talked to a committee, and I said, the committee, the Canadian government. He said, they didn't pass that information on, were they supposed to? And I said, yes. He said, we're taking Wi-Fi to court in the US on this, and imagine this. He said, have you seen that when they talk about a probable cause, probable link between cell phones and brain cancer, guess what we reported to Parliament? Here's the link, guys. We're not electrically compatible. with these frequencies. Now you guys, everybody have appliances at home where if you go home and look at your appliances, your hair dryers, whatever it is, look on the back of your appliance and all those things and you'll see 60 hertz. That's the frequencies your appliance run at and they communicate with each other. Imagine this when Wi-Fi is in a room. So 60 hertz talks to 60 hertz. Imagine Wi-Fi is put into a schoolroom to talk to that computer at 2.4 billion hertz, 2.4 gigahertz. And guess what? Here's a child, which we never even considered, that's got a brain that's running at 7 hertz. 7 hertz. And we're not electrically compatible. When they're sleeping, a half a hertz. And here's this very delicate thing. And when we talk about a heat effect, imagine this. When these things go through walls and roofs and go through tissue, they actually polarize at twice the frequencies. So imagine this with doctors when they said they're heating up, and I said some of them might be caused by them being electromagnetically induced with currents of their own. The other part is they're polarizing. Imagine this, polarizing, changing direction. Those kids at a molecular level are changing direction 4.8 or 10 billion times a second, on top of the other things. We're not electrically compatible. And again, if the government was doing their job and stepping up and telling you guys, I wouldn't have to be here doing this or putting up with nonsense like that. Because listen, it's just the reality of it. To not get answers, it's not something you guys want. Okay? Go ahead.
I sent out the emails that were on the bottom of the list to some of the government.
Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. I sent the emails that were going to the different government bodies that were suggested on our information sheet. And I got one response back, and the response was, basically it's too expensive to try and hardwire everything, so it's never going to go.
When you imagine this, President Obama said this, health costs will bankrupt the U.S. government. So tell me this, you know, do you get to be a superpower if you're bankrupt? Tell me this with Canada. You know, you guys imagine this. You hear these guys arguing right now about health costs across Canada. Health costs, you know what? Seniors can't get care. These guys can't get care. These guys can't get care. And imagine this. Doctors are not even considering people in an environment being affected by these electromagnetic frequencies that are causing nerve problems. You know, my questions are to the Premier's office, or the Prime Minister's office as well. What's it going to cost Canada to do neurological tests on the entire population? Because people are going there, and imagine this in a doctor's office. They bring us in and they say, we want you to take a look at this child. First off, looking at a child with brain cancer just makes me angry, because how the heck did these little guys get hurt in the first place? But to say to the doctors, I want to know about their wireless environment. And they said, why? And I said, these little unprotected guys can have some problems. And we just want to make sure of all that. So there's going to be more questions later on.
Yeah. Could I just mention, I'd prefer if you could hold your questions until after the break, actually after the presentations. I'll let you know when, so we can get on. Do you have much longer?
Yeah, no, and all I want to do with this is, now when you guys get a hold of me here, listen, I'm an electrician, guys. You know, listen, when we leave your place, we don't ever leave a place and say, listen, you know, the power's not on, sorry, you're on your own. You know, we get the job done at the end of the day. So when people want to come to me, and there's no super electrician lobbyist that goes in and lobbies a construction site or a mill, because you know what, we're going to throw rocks at them and get rid of them. So if you guys want to get a hold of me and you're looking for any information, listen, here's what I sent to the government. And when I, as a qualified professional, contact them and their response is garbage at the effects of your health or your children's health, your grandchildren's health, or bees or whatever, listen, it's unacceptable, and I've got to do a job, okay? So we'll answer some questions later. You guys, thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Curtis. We're going to have a break now. We've got some things to straighten out with the computers and the multimedia thing. So we can take a break, help yourself to the coffee and the treats. I do want to mention that some of you are here, I'm sure, because you have a concern about getting a smart meter. There are example letters on the tables, like a letter of refusal, a letter if you already have a smart meter. There's a letter insisting that they remove, a letter of removal.